Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next 30 minutes. Vanuatu's Prime Minister cancels Lalit Modi's passport, cites rejection of India's alert request by Interpol. The ex-IPL chief is wanted in India for alleged financial irregularities. India and the European Union are to begin the 10th round of negotiations for a proposed free trade agreement in Brussels. The Kremlin says Russia and the US are on a long, hard road to restore ties, but Putin and Trump have shown political will ahead of US-Ukraine talks in Riyadh. And over 500,000 flyers are facing travel disruption at German airports. A 24-hour strike over workers' wages has grounded thousands of flights. In fresh trouble for ex-Indian Premier League chief Lalit Modi, the Vanuatu government has decided to cancel the passport issued to him. The Vanuatu government has said that the attempts to escape extradition don't qualify as a legitimate reason to get citizenship in the South Pacific Ocean nation. Vanuatu Prime Minister Jotham Napat on Monday directed the Citizenship Commission to cancel the passport issued to Modi, citing the rejection of Indian authorities' request for an Interpol alert due to insufficient evidence. Lalit Modi, who's wanted in India for alleged financial irregularities, earlier filed an application with the Indian High Commission in London to surrender his Indian passport. The Vanuatu PM clarified that a Vanuatu passport is a privilege, not a right, and applicants must provide legitimate reasons for citizenship. Prime Minister Napat said that in recent years, the Vanuatu government has strengthened the due diligence process for its citizenship by investment program, resulting in more applications failing the enhanced security measures put in place by Vanuatu Financial Intelligence Unit. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set for a 2-day state visit to Mauritius, during which he will also be the chief guest for the National Day of that country. The Indian High Commissioner to Mauritius, Anurag Srivastava, has shared key insights ahead of Prime Minister Modi's upcoming state visit. DD India's Akshay Dongre has spoken to him ahead of the visit. Take a look.
Excitement is brewing up in Mauritius as Prime Minister Narendra Modi is all set to arrive in the country. Both the countries share very close relations, but with this state visit of Prime Minister, the relations are expected to grow to newer heights. And to talk about the state visit, we have the Ambassador of India to Mauritius, Mr. Anurag Srivastava. Sir, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to come and be the chief guest of the National Day of Mauritius. How significant do you think is this visit by the Prime Minister?
This is a very significant visit. Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji's visit, which is coming up on the 11th and 12th of March, is on the invitation of Prime Minister Dr. Naveen Chandra Ramgoolam, and Prime Minister Modi has been invited to be the chief guest at the National Day celebrations of Mauritius on the 12th of March. The date 12th March is of great significance to both countries. It is, of course, the day when Mauritius became independent. It was also the day when it was declared as a republic. But at the same time, this day was particularly chosen for a certain reason. This is the day when Mahatma Gandhi started his Dandi March from Sabarmati Ashram. So it is a day which holds significance to both countries. This visit is very high on symbolism. It is also very high in terms of our substantive outcomes and content. Because this is a truly special relationship.
Do you think this people-to-people connect is perhaps one of the very rare kind of connect that you see around the world between two countries?
Absolutely. This is a truly special relationship, as I said, because it is placed on the bedrock of our strong people-to-people ties. And these shared bonds of history, the shared bonds of culture, heritage and kinship that bind us together is the strength of the relationship. But at the same time, I must add that this relationship has evolved into a modern partnership which is very multifaceted. So Mauritius is our partner in terms of our interest in the Indian Ocean region. It is a maritime security partner. We have a development partnership relationship with Mauritius.
Indian High Commissioner to Mauritius, Mr. Anurag Srivastav, telling us about all the preparations that are going on and the excitement that is brewing up in this island nation for the arrival of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. With camera person Ajit Kumar, I'm Akshay Dongre, DD India.
Also, New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon is to travel to India from the 16th to the 20th of March as Delhi and Wellington plan to firm up ties with a focus on wider Indo-Pacific region. This would be the first visit to India by Prime Minister Luxon in his present capacity. During his visit, Prime Minister Luxon will hold talks with Prime Minister Modi on the 17th of March, covering various aspects of India-New Zealand relations. Prime Minister Modi will also host a lunch in the honour of the visiting dignitary. Calling on President Draupadi Murmu is also scheduled for the same day. The visiting Kiwi Prime Minister will join the inaugural session of the 10th Raisina Dialogue 2025 on the 17th again in New Delhi as the chief guest and deliver the keynote address. Armenian Foreign Affairs Minister Araraf Mirzoyan will meet External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar in New Delhi on Monday. The Armenian Foreign Minister has arrived in New Delhi on Sunday on a two-day visit. During his visit, the foreign dignitary will also deliver a lecture at the Indian Council of World Affairs. Armenian Foreign Affairs Minister Mirzoyan earlier visited India in April 2022 to participate in the Raisina Dialogue. India and Armenia share friendly relations rooted in historical ties between the people of the two countries. In 2022, the 30th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between India and Armenia was celebrated. The Indian Navy's mission-deployed warship INS Tarkash provided timely technical and medical assistance to an Indian dhow and its injured crew off the Somali coast. On receiving a distress call, INS Tarkash swiftly responded to the emergency. The ship's crew expertly operationalized the dhow's defective reverse osmosis plant, restoring access to drinking water on board. Additionally, the ship's medical team provided first aid to an injured crew member who had sustained injuries due to inclement weather. This shows the Indian Navy's commitment to ensuring safety and security in the Indian Ocean region. Let's now take a look at some other stories making the news today. Well, the third India-Cambodia Foreign Office consultations were held in Siem Reap, Cambodia on Monday. The Ministry of External Affairs in its statement said that both nations expressed satisfaction with the progress made across various sectors of bilateral engagement and agreed to explore new avenues of cooperation, including in health and digital technologies. Based on recommendations from the Directorate General of Trade Remedies, India's Ministry of Finance has informed that a decision has been taken to impose an anti-dumping duty on trichloroisocyanuric acid, a chemical used for water treatment imported from China and Japan for 5 years. The Ladakh Ski and Snowboard Association, that's the LSSA, has launched a 6-day basic snow ski coaching camp for beginners at Barkbugu, Goma Kargil. The event aims to educate and engage the younger generation in physical activities for overall well-being and an appreciation for adventure sports. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. Ceasefire talks are set to resume between Israel and the Hamas in Doha with widening differences. Does the US have leopards? Well, almost, but scientists are fighting hard to keep the ocelot from being wiped out. And wistful artworks of Tibetan children on the theme, "If I Were in Tibet," to mark over 6 decades of living in exile.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is set to visit Saudi Arabia on Monday for key talks with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. This comes ahead of a crucial meeting between Ukrainian and US officials later this week. The discussions aim to establish a framework for ending Ukraine's ongoing conflict with Russia, but with US aid to Kyiv currently paused, the stakes are very high. Here's more.
As clashes continue in Ukraine, the efforts to secure peace will hinge upon a crucial meeting in Saudi Arabia this week. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will hold key talks with Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on Monday. This will be followed by Ukrainian representatives meeting with the American team on Tuesday. Zelensky has vowed to persist in efforts to end the conflict. He is pushing for renewed peace efforts and has expressed hope for progress in talks.
Ми продовжимо працювати заради.
We will continue working to bring peace closer. There will be my visit to Saudi Arabia. Also today, the meeting saw our teams, Ukraine and the United States in Saudi Arabia, is further prepared. We hope for results both in preparing closer and in continuing support.
US President Donald Trump expressed optimism, saying that he believed significant progress would be made during the week.
Let's see what happens with the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. I think you're going to have eventually, and maybe not in the distant future, you're going to have some pretty good results coming out of Saudi Arabia this week. Well, I think they will sign the minerals deal, but I want them to want peace.
The US is planning to use Tuesday's meeting to determine whether Ukraine is willing to make concessions to end the conflict. US will also determine whether Ukraine is indeed serious about improving ties. The talks come after last month's disastrous meeting between Trump and Zelensky, which erupted into a live verbal spat. The meeting in Saudi Arabia will decide whether the US support to Ukraine resume or the stance toughens further. Without some concessions, the prospects of a handshake look slim. European nations have pledged to increase defense spending, but NATO data shows that last year, Washington provided over 40% of Ukraine's military aid, something that Europe may now struggle to replace. Anamika Pandey's report, DD India.
Also, the Kremlin said on Monday that Russia sees restoring ties with the United States as a long, hard task, but Presidents Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump have expressed their political will to move ahead. Ahead of the high-level diplomatic talks between the US and Ukraine in Saudi Arabia, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov also said that it's important to understand if Kyiv wants peace or not.
We are at the early stage when it comes to restoring of our bilateral ties. A long road lies ahead, a hard one. But at least the two presidents expressed political will to this effect.
So Riyadh will remain in focus for the coming few days because not just Volodymyr Zelensky but also US's Secretary of State Marco Rubio set to land there very shortly as well. We'll keep an eye out for what happens next, but in the meantime, moving ahead. Well, the navies of Iran, Russia and China held a joint maritime security belt 2025 exercise in Iran on Monday. The exercise is aimed at strengthening military ties between the three nations as they seek to counterbalance US hegemony and challenge the Western-led global order. This was the fifth joint naval exercise that was held near the Iranian port of Chabahar in the Gulf of Oman. Iran sent a stealth missile corvette and a patrol ship to take part in the drill. Now shifting focus to the Israel-Hamas conflict, where talks to prolong the fragile ceasefire, the first phase of which ended on the 1st of March, are expected to resume in Qatar on Monday. Israel wants the Hamas to accept an extension of the first phase of the ceasefire. But the Hamas wants to start negotiations on the ceasefire's second phase, which would see the release of the remaining hostages from Gaza, withdrawal of Israeli forces and a permanent end to the war. The Hamas is believed to be holding 24 living hostages as well as the bodies or remains of 35 others. Meanwhile, Israel ordered all of Gaza's electricity supply to be cut off on Sunday in an effort to pressure the Hamas into releasing the remaining Israeli hostages held in the territory. Energy Minister Eli Cohen's announcement came a week after Israel cut off all aid supplies to the territory, which has a population of more than 2 million people. In Germany, a 24-hour strike by Frankfurt airport workers has led to thousands of flights being cancelled in a dispute about workers' pay. In fact, the strike is at all airports in the country. It's a nationwide strike. The strike, called by the Verdi union on Friday, has impacted 13 airports across the country, including Munich, Berlin and Dusseldorf. The operator of Frankfurt Airport said no passenger flights would depart on Monday, with delays and cancellations also possible on Tuesday. Workers at Hamburg Airport brought their strike forward by one day, with nearly 300 flight cancellations there on Sunday itself. Now, more than 500,000 people are facing travel disruption at different German airports. Of the 1,116 incoming and outbound flights planned from Frankfurt or to Frankfurt on Monday, 1,050 had already been cancelled, with that number expected to rise further. And joining us with more on this is DW's Chiponda Chimbelu from Berlin. Hi there, Chiponda. What can you tell us? What are the striking workers really demanding?
The trade union wants a collective wage agreement for 2.5 million public sector workers, and its demands include an 8% wage hike. Now, that is something that would amount to at least 350 euros more for every worker's salary. Now, Verdi also wants higher bonuses for stressful jobs and 3 additional days off. Now, it's worth noting that the trade union is calling this a warning strike, and it comes after a second round of wage negotiations for public sector employees fell through. The employers, that is the local authorities and the federal government, have said that Verdi's proposals are not financially feasible. And it would cost local authorities around 11% more, which is nearly 15 billion euros a year. And the extra time off would mean that the authorities would have to reduce the services they offer. Now, these strikes aren't just affecting air travelers or air travel, they are also affecting workers in healthcare and childcare who have also been striking. And local authorities and the government, though, are yet to present a counter offer. And we may get to see more of where this is heading on Friday. And that is, of course, when the next round of negotiations are set to take place.
And Chiponda, apart from the flyers, how will today's strike affect the aviation industry, which has had some really torrid days already?
Well, a lot will be riding on whether those negotiations on Friday between the union and public sector employers are successful. But for the aviation industry, the strike is further bad news, and that is because air passenger travel in Germany is still below pre-pandemic levels. And while this isn't a strike by people who work for the airlines, it is the kind of inconvenience that leads passengers to consider other options, like the train when traveling domestically or to neighboring countries. And that is the trend that we have already seen here in Germany. When people have a choice between flying or taking the train, they generally choose the train. And that is, of course, despite the fact that German trains are not as punctual as they used to be.
Right. Caught between a rock and a hard place, it seems. Thanks a lot for joining us, Chiponda from Berlin. Now, alarmed by the fast declining numbers of a species of wildcats known as the ocelot, scientists in the United States are going all in to promote breeding, with hopes of starting another generation of the dwindling species using artificial insemination and in vitro fertilization, none of which have given any satisfactory results so far. Listed in 1982 as an endangered species in the US, ocelots are medium-sized spotted wildcats, with numbers decreased to fewer than 100 in 2 small breeding populations in South Texas, believed to be the last wild population in the country. Last year, the East Foundation and US Fish and Wildlife Service approved a safe harbor agreement allowing for the release of ocelots on private lands in South Texas to reproduce and thrive under watchful eyes of researchers. The day 10th of March holds deep significance for Tibetans everywhere. It was on this day in 1959 that the Tibetan uprising began against the Chinese forces. Today, after living in exile in India for over 6 decades, the Tibetan people still deeply hope that someday they will return to their homeland. It's a longing that deeply fills their hearts. And so, If I Were in Tibet was the theme of an art exhibition held at India Habitat Centre in New Delhi, where Tibetan students from 5 schools of Himachal Pradesh showcased their creativity. DD India's Tanvi Thereja reports.
Kadhok in Tibetan means color. While the material nature of colors may be the same, the true essence lies within individual interpretation. Kadhok is also the name of a Dharamshala-based collective of contemporary Tibetan visual artists that strive to preserve and reimagine Tibetan identity through art. And so, Kadhok, in collaboration with the Foundation for Universal Responsibility of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, organized a 5-day Tibetan children's art exhibition called Dreaming Tibet from Monday in New Delhi. After over 60 years in exile, Tibetan children continue to dream of their homeland that they've never seen but only heard of from their parents and grandparents. And these interesting works of art created by students of class 8th to 10th speak silently of their hopes, aspirations, and identity. In an era where justifying aggression is prevalent, Tashi Nyama, Kadhok's co-founder, feels that it is the young Tibetan generation that understands the political impediments of returning back to their motherland much better.
When I was also growing up in India, I used to think that Tibet, India is Tibet, and Potala Palace, which is like a capital city of our Tibet. I used to think that Potala Palace was in Dharamsala, Himachal Pradesh. And as you grow up, you know that that this is not actually the fact, right? So, but for these kids, these budding artists, they are very much aware about it. I think mainly because of the information that we have, this information sources that we have, and they are very much aware about it.
Though born and brought up in India, Tibetan children retain a deep longing to return to their homeland. So freedom was a recurring theme in the artworks exhibited by these young minds at the India Habitat Centre in New Delhi.
I think for us a big wish with this children's art exhibition is really to give the voice to young children. Many times, especially on big political issues, we hear politicians, we hear the media, we hear professionals and researchers, but to give young people a voice, I feel like is very important. This is the future of Tibet, and so is it with every child. It's representing the future. So I would really hope that we give voices to these children, like give them a space in the community to have a voice and to tell their stories, and hopefully they will be heard here.
At a time when weapons are perhaps easier to acquire than paints and brushes, when peace deals are hard to negotiate and seal, these artworks reflect the deep inner hopes, dreams, and aspirations of young Tibetans. Tanvi Thereja for DD India.
That's all we have for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. You can scan the QR code on the screen and download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.